Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. We are back with another tutorial and we are going to play with one of my favorite things to play with, which is rhinestones. So I'm going to be doing a new design, something that's a little bit different for me. As you guys know that I typically gravitate towards like a single color palette or maybe a couple of colors, but not usually something that's a little bit more intricate and challenging, I would say, to put together. But I promise that it's not too difficult, but I am going to walk you through the step-by-step process of both painting your tumbler to prepare for rhinestones and how I've been prepping my cups to be ready for adding all of those one by one added rhinestones onto my projects. So, of course, all the supplies I use for today's video will be listed and linked down below. Definitely be sure to check out that description box for discount codes and links to all of my social media so you can follow me on my other platforms. But I'm excited to show you this completed cup. So let's go ahead and jump right into today's rhinestone tutorial. All right guys, so we're gonna go ahead and hop into today's video. So as I mentioned, we are making a rhinestone tumbler, and this is a little bit different than rhinestone tumblers that I've done before. So it's a little bit more intricate, I guess you can say, which I really love. I especially love to do a scatter method, and so being able to do this in kind of a different design and not just all one color or like an ombre or like just a play on, a few colors, I'm really vibing with. So I'm gonna show you how you can prepare, paint, epoxy, do all of the things to get your cup ready. So what we are doing is you're gonna see me prepare a tumbler that we're gonna paint colors that you're going to be like, wait, Lysha, that's not what you showed me in the thumbnail. And it's not. I ended up doing the cup that I rhinestoned for today's tutorial. I ended up painting that off camera because I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. And then when it came out so nice, I decided that I was going to come back and show you guys the process of what it looks like to prepare that style of a cup. So that's what you're watching me do today. So we're doing all the normal prep work that we would do for a tumbler, right? So we're sanding our cup. We are cleaning that off with 91% rubbing alcohol or taking it inside to wash with dish soap and water. And then we're gonna kind of lay the foundation or design area for where we're going to paint the different sections, okay? So after I have sanded my cup, I did add a little bit of tape to the bottom. This cup is gonna have rhinestones all the way up to the top, but you will notice in my other cup that you're gonna watch me rhinestone in this tutorial, you'll notice that that cup does also have a strip of stainless steel at the top as well. I didn't push the rhinestones all the way to the top of that cup when I did that design, but this one I'm going to show you with just taping off of the bottom. So the first thing I did first that you just saw me do was I ended up just creating a wavy section in the center, and I did something slightly different, of course, for the other cup as well, but this is kind of the basis of the same design. It doesn't have all of the colored elements, but the process is essentially the same, okay? So we start with the wavy section first, and now we're going to start to put our lines on this to create the checkered pattern. So we're going to treat this checkered pattern just like we would if we were going to be using, masking tape and glittering each section like I've done plaits on my channel before. But of course, we're doing this as a checkered pattern, not a plaid. So I want to make sure that we're only utilizing two colors, right? So it's going to be in every other type of thing. So I am using my little tumbler tool here that I got from Cowbell Custom. I will link that in the description box. I'm also using her cup holder as well, tumbler holder as well, to hold my cup steady so that I can get all of this on. But this is a measuring tool, which is perfect so that you can make sure that you get a straight line at all times. And I will tell you, it is a game changer when you are trying to line up vinyl, when you are trying to add that vinyl striping on, or just, marking where things need to go so that you can easily, of course, get that, piece of section of washi tape, get your masking tape on straight without any hassle. So I am doing the vertical lines down the top, skipping the center section, of course, because I don't want those lines to go through. And I'm not really measuring from line to line. I'm kind of just guesstimating for the spacing here, just making sure that I have about the same space before I draw the next line, and that, I can go all the way around the cup without having like one teeny tiny spot. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use our masking tape to help us create our horizontal lines. Okay, so I'm going to add a piece of 1-inch painter's tape around the top. That's how we're going to start this. And then I'm going to go in and add a section of 1/2-inch tape right under that. So really we're looking at, you know, an inch and a half or so of tape along the cup before we start to draw our horizontal lines. So taking my white Posca paint pen, I'm now going to follow that line, just kind of twirling my cup on the holder, the cradle that I'm using to keep that steady, and just letting my paint pen drag across the cup to create that horizontal line. And then we'll end up moving this sort of down the cup. Now, as I mentioned, just like I didn't really measure kind of around the width of the cup as I was making my vertical lines, I'm not going to measure going around the length of the cup in the horizontal fashion either, just because it just was too time consuming. Could you have? Definitely. But I am someone who sometimes just would rather work smarter and not harder. And could I have created a template for this? Sure. But I wasn't really sure how this original design was going to come out. So we're kind of just like freestyling this. And honestly, I feel like those kinds of handmade products come out way more fun and way more unique than if you measure out every, you know, section that you do to the millimeter. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and just move that tape down. Now, of course, we do have this wavy line that's kind of in the middle. So I did kind of pause here a little bit. I was trying to picture how this was going to look and how far down I needed the tape to go to make sure that the checkered kind of lines up the way that I need it to. So, you know, take your time with this. It would have probably made sense if I had gone and measured, of course, the length of my cup. But again, we're doing this kind of like a freestyle. So that's kind of what we're working with. So now that we have all of our horizontal lines done, I am going to go back, and some of this wavy section here really looked like it should be another section of checkered. So I'm just going to go back into where that kind of wavy template kind of comes up through the bottom to create just a little bit of like that peaking section of checkered there as well. So those bottom sections don't look so large. So once we've done that, we'll move to sort of the colors we're going to be using for the checkered pattern. And I'm just going through and doing that every other fashioned look to create the checkered pattern with my Posca paint pen. That's the color that I'm going to end up coloring those sections, and I'm going to use my acrylic paint pen when I do so, but I want to make sure that I mark them first, because I do have a knack for when I am, you know, mapping things out. If I start coloring it as I go, as opposed to like marking the ones that I'm going to go back and color, I tend to mess up. So it just made sense for me to mark them all with an X, the ones that I knew were going to be pink based on the checkered pattern that I need, which is that every other look, versus, you know, coloring and then accidentally coloring the checkered next to it, you know, in an incorrect pattern. So you're just gonna watch me speed session this, and I'm using my acrylic paint pen. So my Posca paint pens are like my go-to for any and everything that needs some sort of paint, if I can get away with it. So these actually came in handy for this project because, of course, we're not going to be glittering this necessarily. It's all going to be covered in rhinestones, but it really does allow for me to have the paint under, of course, the rhinestone to kind of, you know, show where all of that pattern and color is going to go. But at the same time, I am going to get it done so much quicker because I don't have to wait for paint to dry. So I do prefer to use markers over using paint if I can get away with it. That way I don't have to wait for paint to dry and add multiple layers so that the opacity is where I want it to be. Okay, now for some of these sections, unfortunately, I don't have enough colors of my Posca paint pens to be able to color all of this. So I am going to use some paint here, which is another way that you can, you know, design the base of your rhinestone tumbler without having to go out and purchase paint pens if that's not something you're looking to include or want to purchase out of your budget. So I'm using some acrylic paint, which is great, to, of course, be the other section of the checkered. And then I did, of course, white paint in the center to create that wavy line. So this is going to be like the grid that's going to basically show me exactly where all of my rhinestone colors need to go. And it really just helps me plan out and see what that end design is going to look like. So again, this is like the first time that I've played with something like this. Any other time that I have done like a base of what my tumbler is going to look like for a rhinestone project, this is like going back to one of my first rhinestone projects on the channel, which was like a honeybee a rhinestone tumbler that I did for a cup swap years ago. And that all I did was paint the cup white and then add vinyl before I started to rhinestone. This gives this just so much more of a unique and fun vibe that I'm just here for. This really just is like jump starting me into like wanting to create all of the rhinestone things that I don't necessarily have time to do, because of course rhinestone projects do take a bit of time, and we'll get to talking about how long this project actually took me in a minute. But it really does kind of expand my horizons and creative thinking in how rhinestone tumblers can look, and that they don't have to just be single color. They don't have to just be an ombre or blend. They don't just have to be, you know, an SVG or a PNG that you printed and stuck on a cup and then rhinestoned that. Like, there's just so much that you can do, that you can use and stretch your own creative ability to be able to create on these. And I'm really starting to remember why I enjoyed rhinestoning. So the next thing you're seeing me do here, and you are going to see a peek of me also doing the cup that you are going to watch me rhinestone today. I am adding some vinyl to this. Now, you guys know that I've been practicing hand painting and such, but flowers are still not necessarily the easiest thing for me to hand paint. So when in doubt, we go to our Cricut and we beg her to please work and cooperate so that we can get some vinyl cut to create our florals across this wavy checkered pattern we're going to be doing. So I just used some Tech Wrap craft vinyl that I happen to have on hand, and I will list those down in the description box as well in case anyone's interested with a discount code. But I just wanted to add some florals. I just wanted this to be just a little bit different. I didn't want it to just be the wavy pattern and the checkered, although that is beautiful. I did want there to be some other elements, and I feel like either stars or florals was just kind of the way to go with this. So I am happy that I landed with florals, because I have done stars in a rhinestone pattern before, but I do think that this is like a really cute, like just cute, really authentic design that is just kind of fun, you know, very, very like bold, and just, it's just a creative, fun idea. So I'm really happy that I kind of landed on this and was able to get this put together. So once I had all of the vinyl on, we are going to take our tumblers to the turner. Now, of course, you're looking at the tumbler that I have started this tutorial with, of course, which is the pink and sort of that coral orange color that we're going to be using. So I like to add a layer of epoxy. Now, you're probably thinking right now, Lysha, you've done so many tutorials on here with rhinestones that you've never epoxied before. And that is honestly true. I never have. Typically, I will just sand over the vinyl and rhinestone right over those, you know, patterns and things. But this, I wanted to make sure that there was not any possible way that my rhinestones were going to come up because of like chipped paint or something, right? So adding just a thin coat of epoxy is really just going to kind of seal the deal here, seal everything in, and then it'll be just as easy to rhinestone over top of that, okay? So I did add just a thin layer. I think it was about 10 mLs on that cup, just a little bit more on this cup, which is a 30-ounce size here, as you're gonna watch me rhinestone and as we get into the rhinestone portion of this tutorial. So once the tumblers have cured, you are going to see me begin to rhinestone here. I always prefer the scattered method when I am rhinestoning. Honeycomb, we just have a little bit of a love-hate relationship. My lines are never straight, and what I love about our scattered pattern is I don't have to worry about any straight lines whatsoever. Maybe the top and bottom rims, but honestly, that's about it, and that's what I'm here for, because drawing a straight line, let alone making sure my rhinestones go in a straight line, is near impossible for me. So as you're noticing here, I am showing you right now that I am using some neon white stones from Flynn Sister Supply Shop, and I am adding them to the inner portion of these florals. You'll notice that I did skip a step. So I did skip a step for this. I didn't record me doing all of the outline work. So I have crystal stones, crystal glass stones in size 3 millimeters, I believe, that I did all of the outlines of the flowers and outlines the wavy sections. I did not outline the checkered, and I didn't because I didn't feel like it was necessary. Those two colors are, you know, at opposite ends of the spectrum enough where creating that, you know, thin line of those rhinestones in the color crystal wasn't really going to make a difference to me. You could still really pull those away from the other elements on the cup very easily because of how, you know, drastic difference in color there are. Whereas I was a little bit worried about my wavy sections and my florals, simply because I am going to be using neon white for not only the flowers, but also using that for the checkered pattern. And so I knew that having that flower, like I am adding to Rhinestones to right now, having that directly over the white checkered square was going to blend completely in, and you wouldn't really see the outline of the floral. So that's why I went in with a outline of those specific sections to really just make sure that they stood out from the other elements on the cup. Okay, so back to kind of what I'm doing here. So what am I doing? I'm rhinestoning, of course, but what I am using for my adhesive today is I am using Bob Smith's 30-minute epoxy. It is a 2-part epoxy. You mix equal parts of it. I typically will just use sticky notes. It's just usually what I have on hand because I live by sticky notes in my day-to-day. And I'll just put, equal pea-size amounts on that little sticky note. Mix that together with just like a lipstick or a lip gloss applicator. You can get like 1,000 of them on Amazon for super cheap. Typically what I use to mix my epoxy together, and then I use that to spread that glue on and then add my rhinestones. So I will list all of the colors that I am using down in the description box as well for rhinestones. I will tell you that all of the rhinestones that I used for today's tutorial, for the most part, except for some of these mixes, are all from Flynn Sisters Supply Shop. Okay, so I will link the mixes that I have, of course, and I will put those down in the description box, and all the single scattered colors that I use. What I love about Jessica's scatter packs is that she has sizes from as small as, I think it's SS6 or I think some of them might even have SS3s up through SS30s. And that is huge for me, because when you're scattering projects like a cup and things, having those different sizes really allows for you to fill as much of the gap as possible without leaving huge gaps. Now, I've talked about this a lot. You are always going to have gaps when you are doing the scatter method. There's always going to be tiny spaces if you hold that cup super close to you, right, where a rhinestone isn't going to fit, but you can see that it's a gap. The idea here is to get your rhinestones as close to each other and touching as close as possible at all sides of those rhinestones, to eliminate as many of those gaps as possible, right, to allow it to look more full, and really, vibrant with all of those stones next to each other. So kind of going back to what we're doing here, this is a mix that is called Let Them on the Flynn Sisters Supply Shop website. I did, though, add some amethyst stones that I had on hand, and I think I had some of the blue ones as well. I can't remember the color of that stone color, but I will link those. So I just kind of like beefed it up because I knew I didn't have enough of the actual mix. So I took the colors of the rhinestones that I already had on hand in the various sizes that I happen to have and added them to kind of beef up this mix, okay? So we are doing this section by section, okay? Now, this is where I start to tell you about the time it took me to finish this. So when I first started this cup, this cup was started several months ago. I would love to say it was just like last month or 2 months ago, but I would be lying to you. What I'm going to tell you is I started this cup probably like before Christmas time. So it's been a minute. It's been a minute since I picked this cup back up. So I had kind of slowly but surely, after this cup had been epoxied, been doing the outline work, which honestly took a lot of time. I want to say the outline work itself in those small stones, that probably took me 3 hours, 3 hours maybe. And now, of course, I wasn't necessarily just doing that. I was doing a bunch of other things at the same time and also trying to watch a show. So, that does kind of like, cut down on that timing as well. But that part took a really long time. Now, when I started to add the rhinestones in the different colored sections, I feel like that took me less time. And so when I picked this cup back up, I already had all the outline work done. And I picked this cup up earlier this week and I was like, oh my gosh, I've done cups like this size before. I was like, this cup, no way is going to take me any longer than six more hours to complete. Well, let me just tell you that I'm not sure why I was gaslighting myself, but that was untrue. This took me way more than just 6 hours to finish. Not a lot longer, but still enough for me to be like, girl, what were you thinking? 6 hours? Girl, you haven't rhinestoned a big project like this in a minute. You're a little rusty. Get your head in the game. So this probably took me, each section, I did this over, I think 4 or 5 mornings and evenings. I took like 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at most in the evenings for like 4 days straight. So what is that? Like an additional 8 hours at least. So it took me anywhere from like 8 to 10 hours, I think, to finish. And I kind of wish that I would have like really written down how long it took, because I feel like that's always a question I get. Like, it's either what rhinestone adhesive do I use, you know, where do I get my rhinestones, and then the other question is, okay, but how long did it take you to complete this? And I want to say that it was definitely somewhere between like 8 to 10 hours, hopefully. It might be, if it's closer to 12, I apologize. I apparently blacked out of some of that time and forgot. Anyway, so kind of back to what we're doing here. We are just kind of filling the spaces. So this mix that you're seeing on screen right now, as I'm filling in this third and final wavy section, this is a mix that I created. So I purchased some rhinestones at wholesale, and I've been messing around with rhinestones for a bit. Sidebar here as you're watching me rhinestone, because apparently I am off on all the tangents today. Anyway, I have a true love of mixing things, whether it is mixing glitter, which I have been doing as well, or mixing different rhinestone mixes. Like, I just love to put different colors together and get something new. I don't know what it is, but if anybody finds like a 6-figure job where I can just like mix rhinestones or mix glitter, send me the application, because I will apply tomorrow. I just love being able to do that. It's just so fun and so relaxing to me. So we're down to the final stretch here, right? Once I got all of the flowers done, once I got all 3 wavy sections done, which actually took me the least amount of time. I think it took me longer to do the florals, fill in all the florals, than it did the wavy sections, which actually surprised me. I think each section of the wavy section, wavy colors in the center, took anywhere from like 30 to 45 minutes. So I was really surprised that it didn't take me as long as I had anticipated. But now we're on to the final sections here, which is to do the checkered sections. Now, again, I didn't outline these, but what I did with the white, the neon white that I used, is I really tried to create the border of the outside of that square first, make those lines nice and straight, and then go back in and fill rhinestones in with the center. That seemed to be the best way to kind of attack this and ensure that I was getting crisp, straight lines, and that when you looked at this checkered pattern from at any distance, up close or not, you could tell where the white rhinestone started and where the black rhinestone started. And that was kind of important for me, because again, there's no outline, no boundary here to really determine what separates what, right? You're really relying on those rhinestones to really help you do that. So if your rhinestone's a little too far over into the next section, it's gonna look awkward and it's gonna look obvious. So taking my time with this was crucial. Once though I got all of the white done and that was all dried, I kind of did that in like sections, like literally vertical sections down the cup. That way, none of those rhinestones, as they were curing, would slide and slip into the next section. Once I had that done, I set that aside, let that cure, let that epoxy, 2-part epoxy, harden so that those stones wouldn't move anymore. And then going back in to add the black rhinestones really did allow for me to not have to pay as much attention with my lines, because the white rhinestones around it weren't going to budge. And I really was just filling in the spaces at this point. So using all different sizes of those stones too, in the colors that I'm using, is really crucial too. Having those smaller sizes are great for those tiny gaps and things that you want to fill up as best as you can. Now, again, as I mentioned, you're always going to have small gaps, and that's completely okay. Don't stress about that. That's completely expected. But finishing the rhinestone section in the black was like, I couldn't wait for it to be done. It was just like each section that I was finishing, I was just starting to see like more and more of what the final look was going to look like. And I could just feel myself getting so excited for it to not only just be done because I spent so much time on it, but to really be able to see the final look in all its glory, to like see that design that I drew like come to life, was just like so much fun. So now that the rhinestone portion is done, we can't leave a naked bottom on this tumbler. So we are going to add some glitter and some UV resin down here. But first, instead of just putting that over the stainless steel, we're gonna add a little bit of our paint pen here, just in the color pink, because it's one of the colors that kind of goes with the palette on the rhinestone cup. We're gonna go ahead and just paint that section. We'll color that section in, and we'll let that dry. And then we'll get our UV resin out, add a little bit of Rosita from Batty Glitter, and mix that up to fill the bottom portion of this cup. Now, you don't have to do this. I just feel like a rhinestone tumbler, after you've done all that work, you can't leave the butt naked. I just feel like the bottom of the cup also deserves to shine as well. So rhinestones obviously don't fit here, although I have seen some people do that with some of the tinier rhinestones, but this cup doesn't have a particularly deep bottom like something like a steel magnolia or a tipsy magnolia cup would have. So it just made more sense to do glitter to kind of jazz up the bottom of this cup. But this is a great section where you can add your little tumbler tag, or you could sign, which I'm just gonna end up signing the bottom of mine and just adding a layer of UV resin over top to seal that paint pen in. But then it kind of is, you know, your finished look, and you get to add your name to it because again, you created this, you made this. So once I get all of the resin onto the bottom here, right now I'm just making sure that this is going to be level. So you can't see me, but I'm kind of looking at eye level at the bottom of this cup to just make sure that it doesn't have too much resin that it's going to create sort of like a bubbled bottom or like a not flat bottom, a raised bottom. So I want to make sure that that's even with the sides of that cup to ensure that it's going to sit flat on the cup. So once I cured that for a couple of minutes, this was the final look. Now, after the process of rhinestoning, you are going to want this sit for however long your glue tells you. For me, it's at least 24 hours before I take this to the sink to scrub it, scrub off any excess glue, and really sparkle those stones up before it's ready to be listed on my website and hopefully be purchased by one of you. But this was definitely a labor of love. I will tell you that I probably am going to forget how long this took me and start another one when I get home. But this still was a lot of fun to do, and I can't wait to do some other fun designs with rhinestone tutorials. So definitely be sure to let me know down what you thought of today's tutorial. If you have any questions about rhinestoning tumblers or things that you've run into that you'd like me to help you out with, I'm more than happy to do that or put together a video to show you guys what you can do to kind of solve some of those issues sometimes we run into. But anyway, leave all those comments down below in the comment section. Check out the description box for all of the supplies used today. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I will see you guys again in the next one. Bye.